Judge Cheeks, I see you're quite a prolific writer, and you say I heard you answer Senator Durbin's question. You said you don't take a position in these articles?
I said I tried not to take a position in most of my articles.
Well, you didn't succeed. In October 2020, you published an article entitled, "I Can't Breathe." You remember that article?
I do remember that article.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to America First, the channel where we expose the truth and fight for the principles that make this country great. If you love freedom, if you believe in the Constitution, and if you're tired of the left's radical agenda, then you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications so you never miss a video. Let's dive into this one because, folks, it's a doozy. All right, Patriots, today we're breaking down an absolutely explosive moment on Capitol Hill. Senator John Kennedy, one of the sharpest and most fearless voices in the Senate, just grilled Judge Cheeks, who is up for a federal nomination. And let me tell you, this was a masterclass in exposing the left's hypocrisy and radicalism.
You were talking about Mr. George Floyd's tragic death. Here's what you said, quote, your words, not mine, quote, "What happened next after Mr. Floyd's death is nothing short of amazing. Mostly peaceful protest broke out almost immediately in Minneapolis, and the use of excessive force by police officers became the villain in a sea of protesters," end quote. Did I read that accurately?
That sounds correct, yes, Senator.
All right, and then in October of 2019, you wrote an article entitled "Raising Responsibility: A Concerned Parent's Perspective." You remember that?
I do remember that, yes.
Did you take a position in that article?
I recall my position being talking about how am I going to address issues with my
So
children.
you did take positions, unlike what you told Senator Durbin.
What I told Senator Durbin that I try not to take positions.
Okay. Well, I want to read you from your article. Quote, your words, not mine. "Needless to say, I have a guarded opinion about the police. How do I teach my sons to respect them and fear them at the same time? There can be no question that police officers have some of these same internal or external biases." Let me repeat that. There can be no question that police officers, not some, all police officers have some of these same internal or external biases described above. Do some of them view black males differently than others? I think so. Sounds like a position to me. Do some think black males are more dangerous than others? I think so. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you read that correctly.
All right, now, and then in May of 2019, you remember writing an article for a publication, the title of the article, the title of your article in which you say you didn't take a position was called "The Federal Dungeon Part 2, Court Proceedings." You remember that?
I do.
Okay. And you were talking about, it was then under President Trump, not President Biden. The Department of Justice then had a zero tolerance for illegal entry into the United States, because that, of course, is the law. And this is what you said about that. Quote, "Technically, the law was broken, but these particular defendants, poor, hungry, hardworking, and not dangerous, deserve a pass from prosecution." End quote. Saying that illegal immigration should not be criminalized is a position, is it not?
It is. What I'd like to add is that everything that I wrote while I was an advocate, not a sitting judge.
Oh, I see. That makes a difference. Did you mean it when you wrote it?
When I wrote it,
Did you mean it?
I meant it when I wrote it because
Okay, but you don't mean it now?
I do not mean it now.
So if you
Right
take
now.
off your advocate hat today, do you have your advocate hat on today?
I am no longer an advocate. I'm a sitting magistrate
Okay,
judge.
so you don't tell the truth when you're an advocate, but you do when you're not? Is it okay to lie if you're an advocate?
I don't follow the question.
I think it's pretty clear, and I think you follow it. You've taken a lot of radical positions, Judge, and you can't make this cat walk backwards. Now, you can't make this cat walk backwards. I have one question for our second judge here. Judge, you remember a couple years ago going on a broadcast called Visible Voices Podcast? All right. Here's what you said. It was just a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. So we're not talking way back in law school or anything. We're talking about a couple years. You'd been on the bench how long? 8 years then?
I've been on the bench almost 10.
Yeah. Well, but when you said this in front of God and country, you'd been on the bench 8. You said it in January 31, 2022. Here's what you said, quote, I think that COVID has brought a lot of these issues to bear, especially in the legal profession, where I tell a lot of people all the time, we, the people, never included people of color or women. When you have an institution that is set up by property-owning white men for 200 years or so, it wasn't geared toward thinking about what would be the best work schedule or how we could really incorporate women with children in this field. So it's been a challenge that COVID was exacerbated, end quote. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, Senator, you did.
And then you go on later in the podcast to call for quotas based on gender, don't you?
No, sir, I never,
Yes, you
ever
do.
claimed
If the
anything
senator
about
will give
quotas.
me time, I'll read what you said. May I finish reading what you said? The witnesses denied believing in quotas based on gender, and I have the quote.
Senator, you may read the quote, and then she will give an opportunity to respond.
Okay, here's your quote, Judge. Your words, not mine. Quote, I think recognizing implicit bias is really important. Me too. But I'll be honest, I don't think that's enough. Because the truth of the matter is nobody is going to voluntarily give up their position in favor of women. Women have to demand it. Women have to be willing to require and hold people accountable, hold men who are in those positions accountable, and say, quote, why don't we have an equal number of supervising judges, close quote. You didn't tell me the truth, did you? You believe in quotas based on gender, don't you?
Senator, your time's expired. I'd let the witness respond.
Thank you. No, I have never advocated on behalf of quotas. I think it's undisputed
Well,
that
what
at the
was
time.
this?
Please.
I just read it.
I
Continue
think
your
at the time that the Constitution was written, there is no question that it did not include women, and it did not include people of color in the definition of we the people. We, as women and people of color, have only recently been able to be judges or jurors or politicians. But the systems that were created when I was excluded and when people of color were excluded continue. All I was commenting upon is that the diversity in the judiciary builds integrity in the system and public confidence in those institutions. I never mentioned anything about quota. Thank you.
Good try, Judge.
Senator Butler?
Good try. Good try.
Now, before I get into my reaction, let's set the stage. Judge Cheeks is a nominee for a federal position, and during his confirmation hearing, Senator Kennedy pulled no punches. He brought receipts, folks. This wasn't just a polite Q&A session. This was about holding someone accountable for their own words and radical positions. And boy, did he squirm under the pressure. Let's start with this. Judge Cheeks wrote an article back in 2020 about George Floyd's tragic death. In this piece, he called the protests that followed mostly peaceful and described police officers as the villain. Now hold on a second. Mostly peaceful. We all saw what happened in cities like Minneapolis, Portland, and Seattle. Businesses were burned to the ground. Innocent people were attacked. Police officers were demonized and defunded. That wasn't peaceful. Judge Cheeks. That was chaos. And here's the thing. He's sitting there claiming he doesn't take positions in his writings. But what do you call that? If blaming the police and downplaying widespread violence isn't a position, then what is? It's just another example of the left trying to rewrite the narrative. Now, this next part really got to me. Judge Cheeks also wrote an article where he talks about teaching his sons to respect and fear the police at the same time. He goes on to say that all police officers, have biases against black males. Let's unpack that, patriots. First of all, this kind of rhetoric is dangerous. It's the same anti-police narrative that we've been hearing from the left for years now. They want to paint every officer as a racist villain, and it's no wonder morale in our police forces is at an all-time low. Who would want to put on the badge and protect their communities when people in positions of power, like Judge Cheeks, are out here spreading this nonsense? Here's the truth. Are there bad apples in every profession? Sure. But the vast majority of police officers are heroes. They put their lives on the line every day to keep us safe. And instead of vilifying them, we should be supporting them. Now, let's talk about illegal immigration, because this is where Judge Cheeks really shows his true colors. In another article, he criticized the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy. He said illegal immigrants who cross the border deserve a pass. Let me be clear, no, they don't. Illegal immigration is exactly that, illegal. We are a nation of laws, and if we start picking and choosing which laws to enforce, we lose the very foundation of what makes this country work. Judge Cheeks' comments are just another example of the left's open border agenda. They don't care about the rule of law. They don't care about securing our borders. And they certainly don't care about the hardworking Americans who are affected by illegal immigration every single day. And then there's this. Senator Kennedy brought up a podcast where Judge Cheeks said that we the people didn't originally include women or people of color. He went on to say that women need to demand equal positions and hold men accountable. Now, patriots, this is where the left's identity politics really shines through. They're obsessed with dividing us into groups, men versus women, black versus white, rich versus poor. But what they don't understand is that America isn't about quotas or identity politics. It's about merit. It's about hard work. It's about earning your place, not demanding it because of your gender or your race. Here's the bottom line. Judge Cheeks has a long history of taking radical positions. Whether it's vilifying the police, supporting open borders, or pushing identity politics, his views are out of touch with the values that make this country great. And now he wants to sit on the federal bench and pretend that none of this matters? Sorry, but no. And let's talk about his defense for a second. He claims that he wrote all of these things as an advocate, not as a judge. Well, guess what? Your words still matter. If you believe these things then, why should we believe that you don't believe them now? It's not like you suddenly had a change of heart. This is just another case of the left trying to say one thing when it suits them and another when it doesn't. Patriots, this is why we have to stay vigilant. The left is trying to stack the courts with activists who will push their agenda from the bench. We can't let it happen. That's why it's so important to hold nominees like Judge Cheeks accountable for their words and their actions. If you agree, if you're tired of the radical left trying to tear down this country, then make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to America First. Together, we can shine a light on the truth and fight for the values that make this country the greatest nation on earth. Thanks for watching, and God bless America.